people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Jai Opetaia, once healed, may target. Lawrence Okolie says, promoter. During the action, Jai Opetaia suffered a fractured jaw. The jaw was broken on one side in the second round and further injured in the late rounds of the fight. Opetaia would have to be considered the toughest fighter on the planet after continuing on from round 2 with one side of his jaw broken, then the other side broken late in the fight, and still winning rounds against a vicious puncher in Briedis. Opetaia's promoter, Dean Lonergan, told Sky Sports, once that injury is fully healed, Opetaia may target WBO cruiserweight champion Lawrence Okolie. When his injury is healed, I have no doubts he will want to fight and beat the best in the world to build his legacy, the promoter said. I'm exploring options. Jai's goal after winning this fight is to win the WBO belt, and if the deal is right and all parties are on the same page, it's a fight Jai wants. Jai has the ambition to unify this division, and given he is now rated the best cruiserweight in the world, that is a reality. Don't forget.
He's lineal.
Whether you like it or not, Briedis wasn't just this division's IBF champion, he was also this division's Ring Magazine and Lineal champion, making Jai this division's Ring Magazine and Lineal champion for having beaten him this past Saturday.
Makes me proud to be Australian.
You're not Australian. Jai Opetaia, in effect, has become the number 1 cruiserweight in the world for having beaten Briedis.
The prediction stuck and he delivered.
Now that was a physically taxing fight if you saw it. Both guys took a lot of hard shots, both Briedis and Jai Opetaia. I don't imagine that either one of them is in any hurry right now to return to action, to return to the ring. Jai, least of all, when he's got to mend that broken jaw, broken in 2 places. Briedis, say what you want, he can still punch.
Yeah.
Jai Opetaia knows all about that.
Though maybe now Maris can retire and dedicate more time to his music career.
And locking down a Jake Paul fight, he's poured more energy into that than calling out Lawrence Okolie for a unification fight, unification match.
For months.
Briedis is 37. He's 2-time cruiserweight champion.
He is.
Won the World Boxing Super Series, the Muhammad Ali Trophy. He has been there and done that.
I don't think he's got anything to prove anymore.
I feel like Briedis quite deliberately put distance between himself and what could have been a Lawrence Okolie fight, a Lawrence Okolie unification match, and in effect, he has shot himself in the foot as he would have made more money losing to Lawrence Okolie, likely, than what he just made losing to Jai Opetaia. And in that way, that says a lot about his headspace. That says a lot about where he is as a fighter.
I think he ought to pack it up. I think what he was trying to do was extend his reign as a champion.
He didn't want to run any risks with the very statuesque, physically imposing Lawrence Okolie. Might jeopardize his reign as a champion. He sought to continue to capitalize on it by potentially beating Jai in Australia, then taking his business elsewhere, taking his business over to Sky to see about
fighting unbeaten Richard Riakporhe.
I think that both he and his team, he and his handlers, viewed those fights as being more winnable fights than a Lawrence Okolie unification match, which they could have had if they really wanted it, but I don't think they did. And because of that, maybe it's time for Briedis to hang him up.
Maybe. Lawrence Okolie's a hard man to beat.
Shane McGuigan in his corner. Lawrence Okolie, a hard man to beat. Big guy, real big guy. Statuesque. Even as far as cruiserweights go. Cruiserweights, which are really just a nose hair away from heavyweights, full-fledged heavyweights. Lawrence Okolie, he doesn't have the most fan-friendly style, but it does work for him. It is effective. He can, in effect, smother the other guy's work with those long levers of his and set him up for a big right hand.
What a Lawrence Okolie fight usually looks like. It can be a clinch fest until he connects with the right.
Till he connects with that backhand. Once Briedis was defeated and a new champion was crowned, Okolie called for a unification bout with Opetaia. I want that work immediately, Okolie stated, though I don't think he'll get it immediately. I don't think Jai's very next fight is going to be a unification match, not on the heels of a physically taxing fight like this past weekend's fight was. I anticipate that Jai, perhaps he has a little hometown title defense before he decides to ship out someplace else to some other part of the world to unify titles with someone else's champion, assuming Lawrence doesn't come to him, meets him on his home turf. I'm okay with either scenario. I like the fight,
But it's murky.
we don't know if Lawrence Okolie's going to stay on the Matchroom and DAZN side of things. We don't know how long it's going to take Jai Opetaia to return to action, if he'll even get another fight in this year while he heals up. And if he does, who's he going to fight? I don't get the sense he's going to unify straight away. There's a lot of questions that need answers. The fight itself is a fascinating fight, an intriguing fight. Experience and size would have to go to Lawrence Okolie, as well as punching power. I think blow for blow, Lawrence punches harder than Jai does, though Jai, he's got a more fan-friendly style, more appealing, snappier shots, snappier punches. Maybe he has a slight edge in speed. He's a southpaw, whereas Lawrence is an orthodox fighter. Lawrence leads with his left, Jai leads with his right.
Cutting those southpaw angles helped Jai win this fight.
Lawrence Okolie, since enlisting the aid of Shane McGuigan some time ago, he has developed more of a jab, more of a good lead hand, though that could be offset by Jai Opetaia,
Jai's a southpaw. He moves right. He could stay on the outside of Lawrence's jab.
where his jab may come over the top of Lawrence's jab, Jai's southpaw jab over the top of Lawrence's orthodox jab, so long as Jai keeps moving right, moving to his right, where he has the option of doing that, or he has the option of shooting a lead backhand, a lead straight left hand down the pipe.
That's what he did to Briedis, and he landed that straight left hand quite a few times.
Experience would have to go to Lawrence Okolie, this division's reigning WBO champion. He didn't just now win the brown belt, after all, though comparatively, Jai's win over Briedis, aging Briedis, yes, is still a better win than Lawrence's win over aging Krzysztof Glowacki.
It's an excellent fight, but it's not a fight I expect to see this year.
Being honest with you, it will take some time for Jai Opetaia's jaw to heal, broken into places, and when he returns to action, I don't anticipate he's going to go straight for Lawrence Okolie. Not straight away. I anticipate he may have a hometown title defense before expanding his horizons, though I am very much intrigued by this fight. And just in keeping with the theme of cruiserweight turned heavyweight, I should say, news, Murat Gassiev's return is being targeted for August in the UAE or Serbia.
Former unified cruiserweight champion turned heavyweight Murat Gassiev
Is expected to fight in August in the UAE or Serbia, according to the athlete's coach, Vitaly Slanov. It appears that Murat Gassiev, he hasn't returned to the summit. He's not with Abel Sanchez anymore. In truth, he hasn't been with Abel for some time, though Abel did help him get to those 2 alphabet titles as a cruiserweight. That relationship has since ended. We have 2 options for the next fight. It is planned for August in the UAE or Serbia, Slanov said to TASS. Gassiev has been out of the ring since July 22nd of last year, when he defeated Germany's Michael Valish by TKO in the 4th round in December of last year. Gassiev was scheduled to fight against Ukrainian contender Andrei Rudenko, but the fight was canceled. Murat Gassiev, he was really a force at cruiserweight. He was really something special. Dynamite in those hands. He's not finding the success as a heavyweight that he once found as a cruiserweight. Over the last few years, the 28 years old, that's right, this guy's only 28 years old. He don't look it, but this guy ain't even 30 yet. He's been very inactive. After unifying the WBA and IBF cruiserweight titles with a stoppage of Uniel Dorticos in February of 2018, he lost both belts 5 months later in a one-sided decision loss to Alexander Usyk in the final bout of the World Boxing Super Series cruiserweight tournament. Due to injuries and legal issues, Gassiev was then inactive from July 2018 to October of 2020, when the Russian puncher made his heavyweight heavyweight debut and knocked out Nudi Saferi in one round. He then returned the following year against Valish and has been on the shelf ever since. Gassiev has a stellar record of 28 wins, 21 by way of knockout, and one lone defeat to Alexander Usyk, which is nothing to be ashamed of.
Though only having fought 2 times since 2018, there's something to say about that.
Sat out all of 2019, only fought once in 2020, only once last year. This is a guy who's 28 years old. He really should be fighting more often, and for one reason or another, that's just not the way the cookies crumbled for Murat Gassiev, a very exciting young fighter. Some of the same things you like about an Artur Beterbiev, a mid-range to inside puncher with very heavy hands, dynamite in those fists.
If you like Artur Beterbiev, you'll like Murat Gassiev.
I will admit that Murat, he's not as crafty as Artur. To Artur's credit, he's got more boxing ability than he's given credit for, though oftentimes when he's being brought up due to his power as opposed to his boxing. Murat, he's a little bit more crude, a little bit more limited, but let me tell you something. There's not a whole lot of Pernell Whitakers between cruiserweight and heavyweight, so in spite of him not being the craftiest boxer, he is formidable.
Yeah, and he's only fought 2 times since 2018.
I think a lot of people might have forgot that Murat Gassiev actually crossed over to the Matchroom and DAZN side of things quite briefly, though he never actually fought under the banner. The next time we saw that guy, he fought Nudi Saferi and Michael Valish afterwards, sometime in between those bouts. It's a pity, it really is. The WBC's Bridgerweight division almost immediately comes to mind because Murat Gassiev, in spite of being a very formidable cruiserweight, he doesn't exactly have the necessary physical dimensions for heavyweight, at least not today's heavyweight division, where your average guy stands in at about 6'6" to 6'9". Murat is on the much smaller end of the spectrum. He's a pocket-sized heavyweight for today's heavyweight division, and the Bridgerweight division almost immediately comes to mind because he'd fit right in that division. He only has one professional loss, which is nothing to be ashamed of. He's never been stopped.
Standing in at a very modest 6'3",
which might have made him a decent-sized guy in previous eras of the heavyweight division. In this era, he's on the smaller end of the spectrum. I think he could make the Bridger weight limit, which I believe is around 220, 224 pounds. His last couple of fights, he weighed in 230, 234. I think he could get down to 220-something.
I remember hearing that he was killing himself to make cruiserweight.
Killing himself to get down just under 200 pounds. Getting down to 224, 225 shouldn't be quite as difficult, and the division is open. It's right there for the taking. I know that there is only one alphabet title to fight for in that division, that weight class. He'd have to go through Oscar Rivas, rather, the winner of Rivas versus Rositsky.
Rositsky is the last guy that he fought.
Rosetta Stone. But I give Murat Gassiev decent odds to make a splash as a Bridgerweight, even as a heavyweight. There are some winnable fights out there for just such a fighter. The very thought of Gassiev versus Babic at either Bridgerweight or heavyweight, that'd be some hell of a fight, and somebody's sure to go to the hospital.
There are actually a lot of fights out there for Gassiev between Bridgerweight and heavyweight.
Just needs to get busy. He needs to get active. The story is he's supposed to be returning to action in August, later on this summer, and if he does come back in August, it will have been once again a year's time or over a year's time since he last saw action. If he comes back in August against the lighter touch, maybe he can squeeze in a more interesting fight in the fall or winter months before this year is out, barring any unforeseen circumstances or injuries.
Hopefully he could get in 2 fights this year. Hopefully this year will be a busier year for Murat Gassiev than last year was.
And finally, in men's heavyweight news, Joyce expects mandatory shot to be called in 2023. Plans to stay busy. Frank Warren did say he plans on getting Smoking Joyce back out there in September. Who against is the question. With a mandatory title shot looming, you have to consider that whoever they match him against will be with that in mind. You don't want to jeopardize this guy's shot at the winner of Joshua versus Usyk, right?
Right.
Joe said something about wanting a Tyson Fury fight. He even mentioned Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder, guy, we don't know if he's going to come back to the sport or not. In truth, I don't expect either of those fights to materialize. Come early next year, the mandatories will start to be called. Joyce said to BoxingScene.com, at some point, I will be called to fight for those belts. After the AJ versus Usyk fight, and depending on if Tyson Fury is going to relinquish his belt or is he going to fight for undisputed, then it will have to wait for that. In that case, I can fight all the other top heavyweights in the meantime. I'm ready for more. I've got the experience. I've had enough fights. all my career and have been strategic in all my fights. I've gone up through the division, and now I'm highly ranked.
In my previous video, we talked about how they might choose to match Smokin' Joe against the Geet Caballel.
A little-known, unbeaten German-based heavyweight who's flying somewhat low under the radar. He's a guy they were looking at for Tyson Fury at the end of 2020. There is talk that there might be an undisputed fight in December. I'm ready and waiting for my chance, and I will have a couple of fights before then. Salas talked to me before this fight about the different areas we could be successful, and going to the body was one of those, Joyce said. There is a different tactic going in for each fighter, and I think I just adjust.
Oh, well, he did stop Christian Hammer to the body.
Caught him with a couple of hard shots there throughout the course of the fight that didn't last very long, only lasted 4 rounds, and it was a body shot that finished Christian. It was good to get off the cobwebs, and when I am fighting regularly again, perhaps I won't take those shots. I'll be avoiding and blocking them. I'm not making excuses, but because I've been out so long, those are things I need to work on. Getting him out in the 4th round was pretty good, but I got some rounds in for the next camp. He was a tough old guy, and he being Joe Joyce, who stopped Christian Hammer, who he's referencing, he made a very valid point that perhaps Joe Joyce wouldn't look as defensively irresponsible. Perhaps he would look a lot sharper and less hittable if he were more active. But that's been the bane for Joe Joyce.
Approximately a year's time between Joe Joyce's last fight and the fight before that.
He'd likely look a more put-together fighter if he were a more active fighter. But right now, whenever you see Joyce in action, there's always a question as to how many of those punches can he take clean?
Because he takes a lot of clean shots. He takes a lot of clean punches.
We saw that in the Daniel Dubois fight, the Bryant Jennings fight, the Carlos Takam fight, more recently in the Christian Hammer fight. Christian Hammer, who got off some very interesting looping right hands, and you can take those right hands from Christian. But once you get to that upper echelon level, those top-tier, top-shelf guys, some of which have world-class power, can you take shots like that from them?
He mentioned wanting a Deontay Wilder fight. Can he take a right hand like that from Wilder?
The WBO's current ranked standings, Joseph Parker trails Joe Joyce at number 2. Frankie Sanchez, he's right there behind Joseph Parker at number 3. Frankie Sanchez, he had some choice words for Joe Joyce. He says the guy's slow. He says he wants to fight. In truth, I don't expect that to happen. Frankie Sanchez is on an island.
Yeah.
PBC island.
It'd be an interesting stylistic clash, the pure boxer versus the pressure guy.
And because Joseph Parker has taken himself out of the running for a Joe Joyce fight by jumping into bed with Sky Sports and Boxer,
Frankie Sanchez is the next man in line.
Joe Joyce isn't the most skillful guy to the eye, but he does some of the right things you need to do against the stick and move outside jabber, outside mover like Frankie Sanchez. That's the kind of guy you got to apply pressure. You've got to squeeze him. You might have to take a couple of shots in order to deliver heavy shots of your own. Interesting stylistic clash, though I reiterate, I don't actually expect to see it happen.
Nah.
Frankie's on an island.
Behind Frank Sanchez is Anthony Joshua, but we all know who he's about to fight.
Anthony Joshua, Luis Ortiz, Zile Zhang, Michael Hunter. These are all guys who are either spoken for or are on other sides of the street. One guy that perhaps we might see in the ring with Joe Joyce is Otto Valine. Tyson Fury's people, they were able to conjure up Otto for a fight with him. Could Joe Joyce's people, just so happen to be some of the same people as Tyson Fury's people, could they conjure up Otto for Joe Joyce? That'd be an interesting fight.